Hey, what's up? It's Randy from Lamb of God, and you're watching Heavy Consequence.
Hey everyone, it's Spencer from Heavy Consequence, and I'm here with the one and only Randy Bly from Lamb of God.
How you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for being here. And funny thing is, well, not so funny, is that you were the last person I interviewed in person before the pandemic. It was like early March before it happened, and now you're the first person I'm interviewing in person since the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, let's hope we don't have COVID.
Yeah. I tested just in case.
Good.
I'm good. I didn't want to be the one who spoiled the tour.
Yeah. Well, I got it last run. So.
Yeah. And I found it interesting that you guys, you have a new album coming out, Omens, and you had the self-titled album come out. That's what we talked about last time in 2020. And I would think that, part of the reason you were able to turn around an album fairly quickly was the pandemic, and that you weren't initially really allowed to tour in support of that album. Did that have anything to do with the timeline?
It's not part of the reason. It's the entire reason we have a new record. I had zero plans on writing a new record. I figured, that record came out in June of 2020. It is now September 2022. Probably theoretically we'd still be touring on this record. Would have gone to Europe several times, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, all that stuff, South America, several US tours. None of that happened, so the label was like, let's do another record. So it was our last record under our contract with Epic. And my guitar player, Mark, loves going to the studio, unlike me. So I guess it's time to do another record.
Cool.
Nothing better to do. How about that?
Well, I've heard it a couple of times already. I got in advance. It's really good. I really like the last one, too. I like the self-title. I like this one. I think you guys are still, very much on top of your game. And this one's particularly heavy, even for Lamb of God. And the first song, Nevermore, a crushing song, but there's some really interesting things going on in there from a vocal standpoint. You have some spoken word. You have some of the clean singing. I know last time you mentioned some influences like Sisters of Mercy, and I hear a little bit of that again on that song. And, of course, there's the screams. And I wanted to ask you, as your career goes, do you find yourself wanting to experiment more as a vocalist?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get tired of just screaming. There's not a lot of clean vocals on this record. There's, and there's not a lot of spoken stuff. But we did play with a few different vocal palettes when possible. I don't think there's ever going to be a whole clean singing record out of this band. I'm not saying there won't be one out of me, but it would be a different project, I enjoy singing. And as I get older, the voice doesn't go out or anything. It's not getting worse. In ways, I think the screaming's getting stronger, but it hurts more. I get my head, I'm getting old, screaming. I'm 51, dude, After a while, you want to relax. So it's nice to have a few little moments where you can breathe and just, and not,
Yeah. And lyrically, I know you embrace a lot of poetry. Obviously, in the title of the song, Nevermore, obviously there's a reference to a raven in there, so I'm sensing some Edgar Allan Poe in there.
Well, the song, and I've talked about this, we're like, Mark and I, we write the lyrics, we're moving more and more away from explaining exactly what this song means and what that song means, because I think it's taking away from the experience of the listener. Because when I listened to music growing up, I always used to read the lyrics and in the record insert and try and figure out what it meant. And, I had my ideas, but most of the time when I listen to music, it has its own meaning to me. I connect it with a person or a time or a part of my life. And I don't want to kind of ruin that from someone by saying, this song is about my neighbor Jeff when, he stole my hubcaps or whatever. Because that's happened to me. I've asked some of my favorite bands. I've been like, what is this song about? And they've told me some of my favorite songs, and I'm like, really? That sucks. I like what I was thinking about way better. But
I would like to hear that song about your neighbor Jeff stealing your hubcaps.
Yeah. Well, but fuck Jeff. You owe me, Jeff. But that song I've already talked about because so I will speak on that. It's definite Poe references because the song is basically Poe is from Richmond, from where we were from. You know, he was born in Boston, I think, and then like was in Richmond when he was 1 or 2. His mother was an actress who died there, so Poe was adopted and grew up in Richmond, and that's where all of his formative years were, where his first writing gigs were. I'm surrounded by his history in my town. I'm also surrounded by a bunch of other dark history. We are the former capital of the Confederacy. We had the second largest slave market in America. So, and Richmond also being in Virginia was significant from the beginning of America, from the Revolutionary War. Like Patrick Henry gave his famous "Give me liberty or give me your death" speech at a church where Edgar Allan Poe's mother is buried in a graveyard. So the song is sort of a lyrical history lesson of the dark history of Richmond, and very Poe-tinged, you know, because we are in a metal band. It's got to be dark or whatever, you know. But Poe is a complex character, some not so nice things about him, but great writer, and one of the most influential writers of all time. Any literary critic would tell you that. So it's sort of the history of Richmond viewed through a lens of Poe.
Cool. And I know you don't want to delve too much into the lyrics, but there's one line in the song "To the Grave" that really stood out to me, and I'm going to read it because it was, "The broken record of my life skips bodies of my friends."
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, for some reason that line blew my mind. I don't know if you can just expand on that.
What do you think that's about?
That's what I was trying to think. Like, you know, obviously there's the literal sense of the vinyl record breaking,
Right.
and skipping.
Right.
But, you know, bodies of my friends is it have to do something with the people you've lost in life? Yes.
That's a pretty accurate assessment. I think, you know, without saying exactly what it is, let's just say in my life I've made a lot of mistakes, and some mistakes in particular I've managed to learn from and change my ways. Some of my friends, a lot of my friends, made those same mistakes, like a broken record. They are no longer here with us. You know, you can take it's kind of the obvious reason why most people my age who have dead friends, why they're not here.
Yeah.
You know, those are mistakes I learned from eventually. Long, hard, painful lessons. I'm still here. Regrettably, I have more dead friends than I can even count on all my fingers and all my toes. You know.
Yeah, it's tough. But we'll get back to the music, and the title track "Omens."
Mm-hmm.
That one in particular, I did get some real Pantera vibes. Mm-hmm. And I know obviously there's some synergy between the bands. There's you know, there's the groove metal, you know, but even in your vocal delivery in that one, I got a little fill in there, and just some of the musicality, and I just wanted to talk about that, like that kind of, you know, they're kind of back in the news these days, and I wanted to know, like, you know, what that influence Pantera had on Lamb of God when you guys were starting out.
Well, I mean, anybody in a sort of band of our ilk is going to be influenced by Pantera. You know, they had that groove or whatever. It's interesting you thought of Pantera. I hear something completely different. I hear Sepultura.
Okay.
Roots era Sepultura to me, because the song has a bounce to it, like that, you know. But certainly, I mean, in our guitar playing and our guitar players, there's like, you know, Dime was a legend. He changed everything. Phil was a great vocalist, so I mean, maybe subconsciously there's like some of that, but I heard much more Sepultura influence in that.
Yeah, now that you talk about it, yeah. And while I mentioned it, I just wanted to get your thoughts. I think a lot of fans were pretty shocked when the announcement came recently that Phil and Rex are going to take Pantera back on the road with Zakk Wylde on guitar and Charlie Benante on drums. I just wanted to get your thoughts.
I have nothing to say.
Okay.
I have nothing to say about that whatsoever. and that's not me being coy saying, like, I think they should really do it, or I don't think they should really do it. I don't say anything about that because, A, I'm not from Texas or Louisiana. I've never been in Pantera. I know all those dudes, you know what I mean? And I knew Diamond Vinny. So it's that as soon as that happened, a lot of people, what do you think? What do you think? I don't know, man. I'm not the one doing it. So I guess apparently they got the blessing of the estate of Diamond Vinny. So, I mean, God bless. Whatever, you know. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. I'm interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think there's a curiosity level.
Well, there's a curiosity level. I think not for me, really, to tell you the truth, because I saw Pantera. Yeah. I don't need to see Pantera. Yeah. Again, I saw Pantera, but there's a lot of young people that never saw Pantera. So, and of course, Benante and Zakk, friends with Diamond Vinny as well. So, yeah. I mean, I really don't have any judgment in one way or the other.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. We'll get back to the album, and you just released the song Grayscale as a single, and it also starts out with a kind of a fairly powerful line. There's a war going on inside my head. I'd just like to hear a little more about that song in general, either from a lyrical or musical standpoint.
That song, I'll tell you, there's always a war going on inside my head. There always is. There's just a crazy dichotomy up here. But that song originally, Willie and I, a while ago, came up with the idea for the greatest name for a hardcore band ever, Gorilla Dick. Because there was this was all over the news or I saw it. There was two gorillas in a zoo in like San Diego, I think, a male and a female gorilla, and the male gorilla started pleasuring the female gorilla with his mouth, and all these people are watching like, oh, and I was like, yeah, that gorilla knows what's up. He's gonna get a blowjob, right? He's gonna get a gorilla blowjob later because he's handling his business and taking care of his lady first. Hint, hint, dudes. And Willie was like, yeah, he's going to get his gorilla dick sucked later. And then we started thinking about it, and we were like, gorilla dick. And it's like, that's got to be the most evil dick in the world, because a gorilla will rip you to pieces, right? It's like, oh, a gorilla dick would be the scariest dick in the world. So we're like, that's the perfect name for a hardcore band, Gorilla Dick, right? It sounds tough. Then we come to find out, the gorillas had little tiny dicks, like 1 inch long, which makes it even better. So Willie decided he was going to write that song for our Gorilla Dick project. And we needed another song. So he's like, here, Josh, check this out. And Josh's like, that's great. So Gorilla Dick, a.k.a. we call that The Dick as well. That became Grayscale. And that's the story behind that song.
I'm so glad I brought up that song, because that wasn't the answer I expected, but it was.
No, it's not. But we are going to do eventually a Gorilla Dick album, so watch out.
Wow. We're looking forward to that.
Yes.
And I always like to ask about the last song on any album, because it's kind of the closing statement of the album. And in this case, it's the song September Song. And a very kind of epic track. And I just wanted to hear more about the decision to end the album with that song.
I mean, I think it's kind of a standard Lamb of God procedure to try and end with an epic sort of longer song. We've closed with songs like, I believe Reclamation was the last song on one of our albums. We've ended several records with like these sort of longer songs. And it just feels right. It's kind of like a wind down to the record, I think, not just ending with something so abrupt, take a little journey. You know, it's the end of the road, so might as well enjoy it and stretch it out a bit.
Cool. And we're here in Coney Island.
Yes.
And tonight you're kicking off a really cool tour with a very cool bill. And tonight we have a very cool bill of Killswitch Engage, Baroness, and Suicide Silence.
Yeah.
And there's some really other cool bands joining the bill later, like Spirit Box and Animals as Leaders.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's almost got almost like a mini traveling festival vibe to
Right.
it. And it's a really, and I feel that it speaks to kind of the wide spectrum that you get in heavy metal nowadays. Do you feel like the definition of metal has kind of changed over the years?
Well, sure. I mean, there's like purists that are like, that's not metal or whatever. And I always kind of laugh because it's like, who fucking cares? Right? You know, is that the hill you want to die on with Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden charging whatever, you know? Like, no offense to Bruce Dickinson or whatever, but that's like, that would be like, that's a very Iron Maiden-esque sort of statement, you know, like, charge. It's just music grows and evolves and changes and different things meld together. And yeah, the definition of metal is going to change over the year. It's going to broaden. And there's going to be cross genre bleed, you know, like hardcore now. We're in New York. There is still, don't get me wrong, I know some of these people, so don't come fucking beat me up or whatever. There's still New York hardcore, right? And it is New York hardcore. But even within that, there's a lot of metal influence, and in metal there's been a lot of the hardcore and punk rock influence. So like, what is hardcore now? Like I listen to some bands and they're like, I guess the kids know more of the subgenres and shit, but they're like, this is a metal band or this is a hardcore band. And I'm like, kind of sounds the same to me. You know, it's all mushing together. And I mean, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, that's what I didn't come up in the metal scene. I came up in the punk rock scene. I sing for a metal band. So it doesn't have to be so codified, so balkanized. Everything is this or that.
Yeah.
It's just music.
Yeah. And it's cool because there's bands like Turnstile.
Oh, love them.
Yeah.
Love them. Which do some really interesting things. They come from the hardcore scene. They reminded me a lot of like earlier stuff, but now they're just like getting weirder and weirder, you know, and it's great. Yeah. It's great. They're fantastic, fantastic live act. Shout out to Turnstile.
Yeah, very cool band. And I wanted to ask you also, you did something really interesting. Before this tour, you were out with Megadeth. Mm-hmm. You did get COVID.
I did.
And Lamb of God did something interesting that a lot of other bands didn't do. You recruited some guest singers. Mm-hmm. What was like the kind of decision-making process in that as opposed to like dropping off those dates?
Well, for anybody who doesn't understand the way touring works, let's explain this. Our band has a guarantee. Is we show up, get on stage, play our songs, we get paid. It doesn't matter if there's just one person in the audience, we're still going to get paid. By the way, if that happened, that one person is going to get an awesome show. Still an awesome show, because that's my ethic. That's how I came up. If you cancel a show, you don't get paid. So if you don't get paid enough times, you don't make any money. In fact, you lose money because you spend a lot of money right at the beginning of a tour to go on tour. Most tours you don't see any profit until the last third or quarter of the tour anyway. So you're just playing to get out of debt, basically. And, you know, we've had guys fill in on guitar before and on bass. So some people say it's different or whatever. For us, the show must go on. The show must go on. And if we can get there and if we could get some friends to help us out, it doesn't matter who it is, as long as they can do the job. So shout out to Mark Hunter. You know, shout out to Joe from Fit for an Autopsy, who's joining us on this tour for a leg. I'm sure he'll come up and sing with me a night or two. And then, you know, Anders from In Flames and Heafy from Trivium helped out some. So you cancel, you don't get paid. You don't get paid enough times, you come home in debt. I'm not allergic to making money.
Yeah. I wouldn't argue there.
Especially when you haven't been on tour in 2 years.
Yep.
You know?
Well, I mean, you talk about the cost of tour. Anthrax just canceled their European tour, and they cited the cost of touring in Europe right now.
I talked to a band earlier today who canceled Europe as well.
Yeah.
Because
inflation there's through the roof.
Yeah, we just came. We just did a 3-week run over there, and it was crazy. Luckily, it was festival season.
Yeah.
You know, so we had good guarantees at these festivals. We only played like 2 headlining gigs, I think, in Germany, but that was just for gas money, basically. But it's really hard to tour there right now. Really hard. I mean, it's kind of hard to tour here right now. People can't get buses. Everybody in the world is on the road right now. The market is saturated. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's what happens when everything shuts down for 2 years.
Yeah.